I did something the other night that was a little unusual. At Mar-a-Lago, I called the drug companies, the top drug companies, and I called RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz and some of his people. And I said, let's all get together and let's figure out where we're going. Because we're going to do a lot of things. Number one, we're going to reduce prices because the middleman makes more money than the drug companies, in all fairness to the drug companies. There's a middleman that nobody even knows who they are. And you look at our drug prices, they're much higher than the prices for the same medicine, for the same stuff. So we met, and we met for a long time, and we talked about pricing.
Hey folks, Dale Jackson here for Yellowhammer Now. Let's talk a little bit about the issue of pharmacy benefit managers and what exactly that is. Now, you hear Donald Trump talk about it, and you've heard a little bit about it on the news. We'll play some clips here in just a second about this. But there was recently an article at Yellowhammer News, and that article basically laid this out in a way that said any changes to the system would essentially be a tax increase on the individual consumer. And I don't think that's a really fair way to look at it, nor do I believe the idea that, maybe some independent pharmacies are closing, but other pharmacies are opening up, run by Walgreens and CVS and stuff like that. I don't think that's a fair way to look at it either. There's a question here, and that question needs to be discussed, not only in the arena of public opinion, but it also needs to be discussed in the Alabama legislature. Now, some legislatures are talking about this. Arkansas, for example, is having a conversation about this right now, and it's getting pretty contentious.
Arkansas pharmacies and our patients are having their prescription benefits hijacked by middlemen. Those middlemen set the prices and control all aspects. In some cases, those middlemen are underpaying and under-reimbursing, which drives pharmacies out of business and patients can't get their prescription filled. In other cases, the middleman is charging the patient massive markups. The middlemen need reform. They need oversight and accountability. It is vital for patient care in Arkansas.
Now, the problem with all of this lies in when the pharmacy benefit managers are owned by the pharmacies. And there's a little bit of cross-pollination there with some of the big chains, and that helps them. Now, the independent pharmacies, they end up having to sell things at a loss, and that causes a problem for them as well. They can't turn down prescriptions. They can't say, we can't fill this because there's no money here. You can't do that. So you end up in a situation where they're actually losing money. So when they lose money, what's going to happen? They're going to close. Now, this is as simple as I can put it. There needs to be some reform here. What that reform looks like, there's a lot of questions there. But there has to be a conversation about this because the current system screws over local independent pharmacies, and it makes it hard for them to stay in business. You may say, well, if they can't stay in business, well, that's just capitalism, and let the cookie crumble and let us figure out what happens next. Great. That's a good argument. You can make that argument, but the playing field here is not actually fair. If independent pharmacies lose out, they will close. There will be jobs lost. There will be all of that stuff happening. And with it, that will come impacts on the community where people will wonder, well, where do I get my prescriptions now? How far is it to the next chain pharmacy? What happened to the pharmacist that I've known my entire life, and now his store has been closed? And I know for a fact that there are pharmacies that have closed, and then their stock was basically bought up by the big guys for pennies on the dollar, and it basically ruined those people's lives in their pharmacies that they worked their entire lives building. This is a real problem. And you can talk about the local impact on the economy as well when local pharmacies close, and because we all know when money's spent in a local business, more of that money stays in the economy. If you give it to a big chain, well, that money goes out of state to wherever they are located. And that's a problem as well. But you don't care about that. What you care about is it going to impact your cost on your prescription? That's all you care about in this case. And lawmakers and all of the interested parties in this, they have to figure out a way to, A, break it down in a way that I can understand, and B, explain it to people in a way where they can figure out how much money this is going to cost them. Is it going to cost them more for their prescriptions? Yes or no. So let's talk about what a pharmacy benefit manager is. And this is how it was explained to me. So I'm just going to tell it to you word for word as it's written down and as it was explained to me. A pharmacy benefit manager is a company that manages prescription drug coverage for health insurance plans. PBMs act as intermediaries or middlemen between health insurance companies and pharmacies. The problem here is those pharmacies own the PBMs. And when they make those decisions, it's to the benefit of the company that owns them and to the detriment of the local independent pharmacies that are basically having to operate at their mercy. This is a problem.
Ahead of session, Charlottesville area delegate Katrina Carlson asked her constituents what their number one issue is. They answered, and now she's acting.
It's happening in urban areas that they can't access pharmacies. It's happening in rural areas where people are having to drive long distances to get to a pharmacist.
Carlson is teaming up with Virginia Beach Senator Aaron Rouse to tackle rising costs and lack of access to health care they say many of their constituents are facing.
Virginians throughout our Commonwealth need immediate help and relief. It's life-saving. It's vital to have access to your medication.
The Save Local Pharmacies Act was introduced ahead of session. Virginia Pharmacy Association Representative Charlie Jackson says it targets pharmacy deserts across the Commonwealth.
If you look across the state, there's 20 localities with 0 or 1 pharmacy in them. So this is a critical issue.
Carlson and Rouse say regulating the middlemen is the solution.
This is going to be requiring is that there be one state overseen PBM that will serve Medicaid patients.
PBM or pharmacy benefits manager.
There's this huge market where PBMs can go and negotiate rates of returns on behalf of the insurance companies.
If passed, Carlson and Rouse say the bill will increase transparency, something they believe is lacking in many areas of our healthcare system.
Minimum of $39 million annually in administrative costs. This will help, promise significant savings and have stronger oversight.
That will make it so that there's regulation around that PBM to make it so that they are transparent with what cost they are negotiating.
Carlson and Rouse tell me while the bill's authors are blue, its supporters are bipartisan. They hope this across-the-aisle support will reduce the risk of the Youngkin veto.
Now, you may disagree that there needs to be reform. You may disagree that the PBMs need to be reeled in. You may disagree with all of that. You may think it's a tax. But this conversation should be going on in the halls of our legislature so they can have a conversation. As of right now, there is a bill that's been drafted by the Alabama Independent Pharmacy Alliance, and they'd like to have a conversation with legislators. It's seeming to get a pretty cold shoulder, but there is a conversation starting. And I got to tell you, the final question on this is just like I said before. How is this going to impact the cost of your prescription drugs? If the argument can be made that this is going to make the cost of prescriptions go up, then there's going to be a hard time getting anything done on this. If you can argue that the cost of prescriptions will go down and independent pharmacies will benefit, well, then that's a conversation that I think is pretty fruitful for us to have.